When was the last time you had a disruptive moment in your life? Something that changed everything. Maybe it's an epiphany, something that you learned, someone that you met, or maybe it's a lesson, something that went wrong, a failure. Something happened that just disrupted everything, changed everything, right? If you haven't had one in the past 6 to 12 months, you're not taking enough risk, you're not moving around, you're not doing enough things, you're not learning. Because if you're at least to be at the top of your game, to achieve the most possible in your lifetime that you could achieve, you have to be on the verge of failure constantly. And every now and again, you got to fall over that edge and fail by accident, not on purpose. That way you can know where your limit is, know where your capabilities are at the current point in time, and learn how to strengthen that. Learn what your weakness is, right? So when was the last time I had a massive disruption? Well, I have it quite often because I've set my life up to do this constantly, right? But honestly, I don't think I've had one in the past 3 months. When I started the Daily Mile, that was a disruptive moment. Running one more mile every day for 17 days, that was a bit of a disruption. There was 5 days where I wasn't really where I was out of my day-to-day schedule, right? So, maybe for a week, there was a disruption there. The other night, I'll tell you a fun story. Professor Galloway, he's an NYU Stern professor up in New York. And he's really big on social media. And he said one of the stories that he tells is that when he was an investment banker starting out, he wanted to make a name for himself. And so what he did is he would stay awake from Tuesday morning when he went into work at 6 a.m. He would stay awake at the office and work until Wednesday night. He would stay there a full 36 hours and then he would leave, right? And now the total hours that he put in for that week was probably around the same or a little bit more than every other investment banker because everyone's working 18-hour days, but no one was staying overnight. And so he set himself apart. He let everyone know that he was different, right? He learned what his limits are. He was able to push his limits, and he made this part of his brand. And he was repackaging all the hours spent at work that everyone was doing in a way that made it more impressive for him. So even though he was doing the same output as everyone else, he was doing it in a different way that was impressive, right? It was a massive disruption. And there's value to disruptors, right? And we'll get to that in just a second. But the other night, I was like, okay, well, when was the last time that I stayed awake for more than 24 hours? Because a really good question to ask someone is, what's the longest time you've stayed awake working on a project you care about? Because if they say anything longer than a day, they're A, probably a pretty interesting person. B, they probably did something that was worth talking about and it made for a great story. And C, you get to know what their priorities are by asking that question, right? But anyways, I decided I hadn't stayed awake in a long time, so there's a script that I'm trying to write, a podcast for myself for one of the YouTube videos that I'm doing on my main account, where I interview myself with the beard, and me without the beard is interviewing me with the beard, that type of thing. I have to script out this whole thing to make it sound like it's a podcast, and so I'm writing the script, and it's taking forever. So I decided to stay awake, and that was a disruption because I stayed awake until 7, 8 a.m., and then I fell asleep. So I spent a bunch of time working on it, right? But the point with all this is you got to have disruption. You got to have times where you fail or do something out of the normal, because if you don't, that means that you're not progressing fast enough, right? If you are progressing at a linear level and it's like this your whole life, yes, you will be successful, right? And if that's all you want in your life is just to be successful, then go on ahead. That means retiring at 65 and making 100K every year, every year until you die, right? That's a great life for a lot of people. I want to be doing massive, insane things with my life, insane things. In order to achieve that, and if you want to achieve that, you gotta have massive disruption constantly, right? You don't wanna gamble $10,000 away and lose it. You don't wanna do something that's dangerous for your health, but you have to do things that are out of the normal, that push you to become better, right? You have to put yourself in a situation that will force you to become better, because if you don't, you will adapt to your environment. And this is true. You see it with college students. They get out of college, even though they spent 250 grand on a college education and they should be worth $80,000 to $100,000 at their first year job. They're willing to accept $45,000, $50,000 a year because they don't know what money is worth. They just got a loan and got approved for it when they're 18, and they don't know that their value is much more than what they're willing to accept, because they haven't pushed their limitations and they're just conforming to their environment, right? You're not that way, I'm not that way, and we shall not conform. We shall try to figure out massive ways to disrupt our life. It also makes for such a great life experience. If you have stories to tell, one, you learn a lot from disruptions. Two, if you make it through a disruption without failing, then you win a lot, right? And then three, disruptions make for a good story either way. So then, and a great life is made of great stories. So if you want a great reputation, it's made of great stories. If you want people to carry your name into another room, you need to have great stories that they can remember, or that they will remember and want to tell in another room, right? If you have the best stories with those people, then you will never have a problem carrying your name anywhere, because other people will carry your name for you, right? Your reputation precedes you. I've heard so much about you. You're so much better in person. Like all these different things, it's because people have heard your name in a different room from someone else and attached a lot of value to your name, right? A good example of this is a series that wasn't necessarily a fail because I haven't posted it on YouTube yet, and that's a whole problem in itself. The editing process, I'm figuring out, right? I'm trying to work through that, okay? But somewhat of a fail, I decided to do a cross-country biking tour last summer. Every single year I take on an event that's just going to define the year. For some people, it would be a life-defining event, and so I want to have that every single year, a massive disruption like that every single year of my life, right? Something that's just totally out of left field every single year. Last year was the cross-country penny farthing tour. For 24 days, I biked on this penny farthing bike. If you want to look it up, it's a bike that is literally 5 feet tall. You sit on top of it and you are taller than a stop sign. You're like 7.5 feet in the air, right? The wheel itself is 4 feet tall. It was a 52-inch wheel, right, in diameter. But anyways, I rode in cities across the U.S. on this bike. In total, I rode like 700 miles. It was like 7 miles per hour. So I was just literally just sitting there for like 4 hours a day on this bike, just medaling around. And I fell off the bike and broke both my wrists at the very end of the tour. And that's how I have this scar right here on my eye, right? Maybe I'll tell this whole origin story eventually, but regardless, it was a huge disruption in my life. For a month, I had these casts on my arm. I couldn't do woodworking. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was like, wow, this is stupid. I still have a lot of medical debt that I'm having to pay off. It was not a good scenario for a lot of people, but for me, I loved it. I ate it up because it was such an incredible experience, such a great story. And for the rest of the time, whenever anyone asks me about this thing on my eye, if they ever ask me, I have an incredible story to tell them that they will never guess. And they will remember me because of that. Because you see it every time you look at me, right? I'll tell them, yeah, how'd you get that scar? It's like, I fell off this clown bike while riding across the United States when I was 21. What? Yeah. And on top of that, I slept outside and I slept in a U-Haul and I didn't eat any food for the first week. What? I ate only protein bars and I had no money and all these different things. Like, it was such an incredible story, you know? Massive disruptions lead to great stories, lessons learned, and at the worst, what was the other thing we were going to say? Oh, and at the best, huge wins. Let me say that one more time. Massive disruptions lead to great stories. Maybe say it in a different way. Massive disruptions lead to, at the worst case, lessons learned. At the best case, massive wins. And either way, incredible stories. Something along those lines, right? So you need to figure out, how can I do something that's going to change everything? How can I just jump out of this? And usually, here's the kicker, You need some type of slap in the face to wake up and to get out there and to do something great, to snap out of reality. You have to have a disruption that will cause you to move towards this vision that you have for your life, right? It's like what are those things? That looked weird, probably not talking about drugs. What are those things that football players do? You snap them and then you breathe it, and it's like, holy cow, it like wakes you up. Whatever that thing is called, I forget the name of it right now. It's like that. You need something to wake you up in the fourth quarter. Treat every day of your life like it's the fourth quarter of the most important game in your life, right? You're playing for the national championship. I don't know any sports lingo, so, but you need this thing to wake you up. And then you're up and you're like, oh, let's go. That's what you need. You need some type of disruption to always keep you oriented on this path. I'm going, constantly, right? Last part is this: the market value of massive disruptions is immense. When was the last time we had a massive disruption? AI. What about before that? Tesla. What about before that? Semiconductors for NVIDIA. That was kind of because of AI. Before that, you had Amazon, right, back in 2020 because of COVID. Before that, Apple's a massive one. But you get the point. It's like whenever you have something that changes everyone's life or the lives of billions of people, millions of people, the market value of that is massive. Apple is the most valuable company in the world. NVIDIA is climbing to get to that spot. Microsoft has been there and they make computers, and that was a huge disruption in the 2000s. What was the other one? Amazon is up there with all those people because they're all just massive disruptors. If you do something that's out of the normal, you are worth a lot more because uniqueness, novelty, competitive advantage, all these things help you to become more valuable. So do something to disrupt your daily routine every single week in a small way, every single quarter in a medium way, and every year in a big way, and you will achieve a wonderful life. That's it. Why not us?